Hey everybody, I'm Eric Gerlach, and this is another talk on philosophy, Zen, and the Gateless Gate. Thank you for your patience on these Zen videos. I have been taking my time, and I have to make videos for logic, modern European philosophy, and other things. But this is going to be another talk on a series in Zen, and I am doing East Asian philosophy this semester, as well as logic and modern European thought. So we're going to continue a bit with some talks on Zen and the Gateless Gate. Now, the last talk I gave, the last few, were on Linji Zhaoshu, Joshu, as I often say, in the Japanese rather than his original Chinese name, easier to say. And they are, together, as well as others, the great Zen masters who provide us the koans, the what is the sound of one hand clapping, eventually, although that's actually a bit of Japan and Korea, which we haven't gotten to. But they are also the folks who then lead to the Gateless Gate, as well as the last video that I just did, a koan collection of cases called the Blue Cliff Record. Please watch all of my videos on that, and then this will make more sense, or just check this out. So the Gateless Gate, the Wumen Koan in Chinese, in Japanese the Mumon Kan, was written and compiled in 1228. It is the most popular collection of the koan cases in the Zen tradition. Again, this is a little like the Tao Te Ching, maybe the most popular book in philosophy ever printed in the world as far as printing and popularity. It is also short and simple. That helps. The Gateless Gate is the short, simple collection of koan cases for Zen. That helps. It contains many of the central moments of Zen in its 48 cases, including many cases we've already covered in the last few lectures. So in fact, this will not be a comprehensive survey of each and every case, or covering. This will be covering some of the cases which are very important and interesting that we have not covered so far, and I will mention some here. Joshu's dog. Does a dog have Buddha nature? Mu, or not, or na, like not all of that something, is the first case. The Buddha holding up a flower and Mahakashapa smiling is the sixth. So in fact, Joshu is put in the first case. He says, I don't fall into the lineage. What position are you? I'm between your ears, he says. And so am I here. So is that siren in the background, even though that's here now and you're not. That Joshu's dog and Mu is the first case, even though Joshu is not Linji, he's not one of the official central patriarchs in the lineage, he's an offshoot patriarch just to the side, who is a great genius revered by the tradition, and he is number one in the most popular set of cases. The Buddha holding up the flower, now that happens to be the moment Zen pops into the world according to Zen. That is number 6. And that's a kind of important moment to have somewhere in this collection, because that's actually the first moment of the lineage, and then it proceeds. So actually, interestingly, you have Joshu holding up nothing at all, not, or something like it, some kind of not, or no, or nope, and then the Buddha holding up a positive flower and a thing, and holding up a finger or something. This is now a dragon staff, is something that Zen folks do, but they actually put Joshu's mu, the empty, and the not, first and foremost, and the Buddha holding up a flower is actually the 6th, along with Mahakashapa smiling, which may be rather open and empty, but is quite a positive thing as well. I do like here, just to fit into the Zen, Wittgenstein in his notebooks does say a rigid smile is not a smile. Why? Because we're actually looking for it to be somewhat a smile, not frowning back and forth, but somewhat not fixed. And that is a beautiful thought here, actually. I'll just throw that in. Nanchuan, Nansen, killing the cat, and Joshu walking out with a sandal on his head. These are both I cover in my Joshu Zhaoshu talks, along with Nansen, Nanchuan. With the sandal on his head, 2 cases in the Blue Cliff Record, I believe 63 and 64, if I'm remembering and recalling that right. They are together, put side by side and summed up together, they are the 14th case of the Gateless Gate. So still out of the 48, that's the first quarter. Dong Shan's 3 pounds of flax, which I do mention is very similarly strange to Joshu's hempen shirt, 7 pounds, is case 18 here. Hui Neng asking Hui Ming about his original face after being chased down on a mountain. See the Hui Neng talk is case 23. That gets us actually almost halfway through. Hui Neng saying it is neither wind nor flag, but mind that is moving is case 29. That is something very awesome and important to me a lot. Mazu saying this mind is Buddha is case 30. And Mazu saying no mind, no Buddha is case 33. So funny enough, and I don't know what to say else about that, I shall remain empty and open and silent. Nansen, the cat, and Joshu, all together or split apart, are together in this text. And Mazu's mind is Buddha, no mind, no Buddha are actually two separate cases, separated themselves by two verses. Oddly enough. Again, I don't know what else to make out of that. I'm not going to. The 48 cases were compiled by Master Wu Men, who lived from 1183 to 1260. That again is solidly amongst the Song and the dynasty, for teaching at a monastic retreat, who claims in his introduction to the text that the collection, including the title, were thrown together without much thought, and the koans are in no particular order, he says. Now, of course, that is also, not only could you create something brilliant just by flinging it together, there is a long tradition, not only is modern art in Germany and America influenced by Zen and Taoism and letting things be somewhat a splash and somewhat of a act, but an unintentional act, but it's still an intentional act. That is inspired by Zen, as well as, I often mention the Buddhist skeptic, it is not Sextus. I believe it is Pyrrho, in fact. Or, again, it may have been one of Pyrrho's instructors. But someone is known in the Greek philosophical world, I have to check my own notes and lectures, for flinging a sponge as a painter at a horse's mouth, and the horse is in battle, which is nice and symbolic also, and he flings the sponge at the horse's mouth in frustration, not being able to create the lather, and it creates the lather of the horse's mouth perfectly. There is something very much about being so frustrated or letting something go. That's very much in Zen and the Art of Archery, actually, in there, but I won't chase that, and I've only read that once and a while ago. But there is something about letting things kind of spill forward as intentional action that you find in art and you find in Zen. And that is both Western, Eastern, Middle Eastern, and all of that, both and neither, all of that, plenty in the modern world, with abstract art, with people reading Zen texts, and everyone being hopefully co-inspired by the world's cultures. So, Wu Men very much says, characteristic of Zen and Taoism, I just threw this together, I'm some schmuck, I don't know. Wu Men contemplated the koan about the dog and Xiaoshuo's nothing. Well, hey, where did that one go? First, for 6 years until he experienced great enlightenment. So in other words, that was the one he concentrated on. He put that first and foremost. He just threw that all together right like it was, of course, for him. Like a crazed Taoist sage, he was known for letting his hair and beard grow out. I actually, since I wrote these notes, I have. Wearing dirty robes and working in the fields by his temple. Well, I don't work in the fields by his temple, and I don't have robes. You know what I mean? I will not disrobe right now, though. Again, that is Linji, and then I strip off all of my robes. The student turns his head, who's been staring at me the whole time, and finally he sees me at last. Ew. The traditional title of the work, Gateless Gate, is somewhat of a mistranslation. In fact, it would be best not to say Gateless Gate, but the problem is everybody in English since the 60s calls this the Gateless Gate, and it's groovy, man. So in fact, it's slightly off, but actually the Chinese and then Japanese, the Americans get most Zen from Japan, not China, in the 60s and 70s, as China has already gone communist, and Japan is very into Zen as traditional central cultural religions, and as in the schools, Rinzai and Soto. The title has become fossilized in English-speaking references to the classic Zen text since the 60s and 70s. So I call it the Gateless Gate simply because that's what we call it in English now. Whether or not you and I, or American or Japanese, we would both call this the Gateless Gate in English, oddly. Wu Men's own name, Wu Men, is the first word in the title Wu Men Guan, Japanese Mumonkan. And it refers to, so in fact, he actually named the text, I was like that when I got here. Well, he also names the text somewhat after himself, or at least his own Zen name he was given. because you would be given something of a name by way of which you earn or have your place. And again, I won't get into detail on that. In fact, that is not my, I would have to look that back up, when you get your name and how. But he actually names Wu Men, again, is the part of Gateless Gate, the title. And it refers to lacking a door. So doorless is his name. So gateless is kind of what it is, but that's the problem. It is, you don't have a door, which is an entry point or way of practice. Wu means no. Men means door or way. So there's no way through, no door. Not to lack a fence or a boundary that includes a gate. So when you say gateless, that makes it sound, of course, like something's off the hinges, off the rails, it's open. Technically, this actually is no door, which is trickier and actually sounds solid and that you can't pass through it. But that is very classic Zen here. The second word in the title, Guan, means wall, barrier, or checkpoint. So this is Doorless Wall, not Gateless Gate. Which is a lot more sort of, they're both confusing, but a doorless wall is a lot less confusing. It's a solid barrier. So his name actually means solid barrier, and he calls it, his name means doorless, and so the text is Doorless Barrier. That's also his name. As a solid, it's a word, it's a thing. Things are somewhat solid. It's also a kind of barrier, the name or the self. The second word in the title, again, means wall, barrier, or checkpoint, a boundary set up to block or allow passage. So it sort of means gate, because it would be something like, and in China, as elsewhere in the world, all over, since Sumer and Persia, you would have a gate and a wall, you'd have guards on the wall, they would come, people would come to the gate all day long for the town or for the wall or for the area, and they would ask you, these are more Buddhist militaristic metaphors. Buddhism is known in India and then elsewhere, I mentioned at the time in the lectures, for militaristic metaphors, and the Buddha is a warrior's second-class son of the second Indian Hindu caste, not a first-caste Brahmin. So what actually is going on is these Zen folks, in having their cases, are not only setting you up to think they're a judge judging you, and you're a case on the docket yourself, and they're judging you as a case, but you're also set up to think that you have hit a boundary or a border, and now the guards are asking you questions, and you're trying to give the password or the right response in order to get in and through. That is very clearly being set up in the metaphors. So when you go to the Zen master is some kind of dumb guard on the border or something, you're trying to get in to sell your chickens, and the border guard is like, I'm not buying it, man. You don't really know how to sweet talk me, So that is much of what is going on in the title here, and these are just the most obvious metaphors. This is just the most obvious blockage, no door, by the way, you got to get through. And you're talking to the guards who are trying to get you through, kind of, but they're also being jerks to you, aren't they? Like the Taoist and the Zen sages. So what are they trying to put you through, of course, is the interesting thing. Now, I will just say here, and again, we'll get to this later, there is a lot that suggests in Zen, and I'll just let this be mystical, but it is rather brute, and of course, it is a metaphor that would put things rather singularly and plainly. If you are always yourself as a solid object, can't get through myself, can't get over this, then in a certain sense, you are the barrier and the gate yourself. And when you realize that, you realize you're already on all sides of yourself, so actually that's not needing to pass through it, as well as already having passed through it entirely. There is a lot of language in Zen which sets you up to understand something like that. We will get to that. But in my readings over Zen, it should be pointed out here that Wu Men is likely somewhat thinking of something like that about his own name, about Zen, and the Zen folks like him say things like that. See, the thing is, the thing that you're struggling with is what you already are. So if you realize that you're always going to be what you already are and gain acceptance, you are the jerk, you are the emotions, you are the desire, you don't burn that off with Joshu, you are the barrier, and then you are strangely, all the time, whether you see yourself polish the tile or not, you are already on the other side and through and the mirror. That definitely seems to be. It is very much also like, may as well mention, if you're staring in a mirror, or people are using mirrors a lot, a mirror is a solid object. You cannot get through it. But there is much play in ancient thought, and then here, how giving is a mirror? Look at it. It reflects everything. It's almost like a mirror is a solid object you cannot get through, but it's also something that's so passive it perfectly reflects anything when it's shined up and clear, right? So in other words, if you see that you are a mirror and your mind is a mirror, you're actually already through the mind entirely as you already are. You may just be muddied up and think you're an impenetrable wall. But if you accept you're a wall, you're on both sides and all the way through it already as the whole course of it. I, of course, say these things that suggest a lot. I'm going to let that there, of course, and of course they would, I would hope, and it does seem these folks do believe that can continue to influence you and could have many different meanings. In fact, as we'll get to, Wu Men did not actually want all of this to stay written down. Ever so sadly, because I'm still saying these things to you. Possibly because life is several things interwoven as well as words, so you can still talk, but you don't want people to simply pay attention to the talking. You want people to see the entire barrier and what it's all interwoven out of. So if you're hitting the words, don't worry, the words are only part of it. And you are, with the words, and also all the way through, or hitting it. Wu Men wrote in the preface to the text that the Doorless Wall is the door into the Buddha's teaching. As it already is. How do you pass through a doorless wall? Wu Men says that anything that passes through cannot be the treasure without beginning or end, independent of causation and time. It seems that we are not supposed to think of passing through the door by going from one side to the other side and then staying all the way through it, through the door and out the other side, but rather passing through the wall by simultaneously finding ourselves as it on both sides. Wu Men says that fools who depend on words and concepts are trying to hit the moon with a stick, scratching their shoes when their feet itch, glimpsing a fine horse running past a window, but those who unflinchingly cut straight through the barrier cannot be stopped by the 8-armed demon king, gotta hang out with that guy, or not, and will cause all the Indian and Chinese patriarchs to fear and beg for their lives. Now that is a great line, of course, and how cynical, Taoistic, and Zen that is. If it's like the great truth of, that's like saying, if I reveal the great truth of Catholicism, Jesus and all the saints and everybody in the heavens is going to weep and wail and say, please don't do that, because it's the worst thing ever to them, which is really turning, in a certain sense, really playing very hardcore with words, let me simply say. Because how much does this guy think he can upset all the Indian and Chinese patriarchs, and what are the Indian and Chinese patriarchs here, as well as yourself? In the third case of the text, now I'm going to go through a couple of these, and this one is the one I mentioned a little bit notoriously. So notorious. This is the other one that is violent. So just, again, trigger warning. In fact, trigger finger warning, specifically, unfortunately, also. What you have here is this is the other one violent other than killing the cat. So much love. But that's very much a Joshu, so my apologies. And this is very much Gutei. Chuzi. So in the third case of the text, whenever Master Juzi, which is confusingly similar to the Chinese Neo-Confucian, Japanese Gutei, I'm just going to call him by the Japanese Gutei, my apologies, was asked about the Buddha's teachings or the meaning of Zen. Whenever Master Gutei was asked, he would simply raise up one finger and go like this. Long before he had been enlightened, when a traveling monk had raised a finger and told him all truths are here, this finger is now the smiling nun and her hat. This is actually based on a longer story in which there is a nun and a hat. And now it's the cries of humanity. All the crying peoples, right? The Buddhas and the Indian and the Chinese patriarchs, or matriarchs, or all of them. Now it's a babbling brook. And now it's a lofty mountain peak towering above everything. I'm shaking it rather than holding it still. Unfortunately, many young monks began imitating Gutei by holding up their finger and thinking that just by doing that, they had some kind of whole understanding. But of course, You may or may not know what you're doing while you do that, and he is somewhat in the zone and woven himself correctly and is doing that and trying to point the way not at the finger, but other people are going through the motions and they're merely having the motions. They don't really get it and are in the flow mentally and physically of it. They're just going through physical mental motions, not seeing the whole, or as he does, we're to understand in the text clearly. So there was one boy, in fact, who's going to be a bit sad, again, so triggered, who would watch Gutei all day and imitate him in every way, which would include holding up a finger a lot. And he's the worst because he's just sitting around imitating the master a lot, and he's really not supposed to be that. Of course, he's supposed to live in his groove. He's not supposed to just copy someone else. This is actually sort of like holding up the fist twice with Joshu a little bit here, in a way. So one day, Gutei asks him, what's the meaning of Zen? The boy goes through the motions that he doesn't understand and puts up the finger. And Gutei takes a knife and slices off the top of the boy's finger, a little bit almost like the ego cut off from the rest of the world. And again, I hope this is much more symbolic than historical, but these stories are told by Zen monks as if they're not going to care, as if this is fictional or real, and I hope and trust that, but I also don't trust anyone with a knife, at least when they're waving it around young children, so you know whether or not they intend it. So, as the boy ran away screaming, hopefully not bleeding out, get a little bit of Bactine for the scrape, clutching his bleeding fingers like, and he runs away, nice enlightenment, so woke. Gutei is like, hey, kid, with tossing him the football jersey, but there ain't no football jersey. So when the boy turns, Gutei holds up his finger, which is hilarious because the kid can't do it now. Of course, I mean, it's hilarious when you're harming children, not, you know what I mean? Again, please, yes, don't hate any of these people because they're beautiful or enlightened, or, worry about shampoo commercials from the 90s. So, basically, Gutei asked the confused and frightened boy what the meaning of Zen is. The boy raised what remained of his severed finger. Then the boy is like, he said, and he raised it up and was greatly enlightened as he raises up his severed finger in a way that hopefully compensated him with workers' comp for his rather severe and traumatizing work-related injury. Again, I'm just going to pretend that all this happened fine or didn't happen. Yes, as in it's fictional. Please don't cut the, off the fingers of children. And yet this is a very famous example of this. I loved this story for many years. And then one day I was actually perusing the internets and I saw on a random art site, somebody had something Zen and a finger cut off. And it's like somebody read that, you know what I mean? And it definitely looked like it was a piece done in one of these here United States. So given some of the images in it. And it was like, so this person read something, I'm pretty sure they found this text here. And the thing that made me happy about it is I never see anybody refer to this text, and of course, why would people? Yeesh. But, it's like, this is actually one of the famous moments of Zen. It's terrible, but it's like, if you know this, then if anybody refers to it, of course, you're like, I know exactly where that's coming from, like, yeah, that's from this. It's hard to mistake it. There aren't a lot of moments exactly like this. So anything with like, hey kid, one finger up and stuff, it's like, that's, that's the moment from Gutei. Like that's what this is. It's a famous moment of Zen in the central collection, and it's only one of 48 cases. So it's not that hard to find in English. Still hard to find though, but not that. In the fifth case, Sang Yan, Japanese Kyogen, told his students, I do love this one. This is also very famous. I think about this one over the years a decent amount, actually, and I still find weird things in this. It is as though you are up in a tree, hanging from a branch by your teeth. So we actually imagine like some person is in a tree, and they're like, oh, ow. I unfortunately have an image of, yes, a dog clutching a stick between two dudes, which thankfully isn't a president holding a dog up by his ears. As Victor Borge said, the president picked me up by my ears and pronounced me a Great Dane, so I bit him. It is as though you are up in a tree, hanging from a branch with your teeth, biting the tree. Your hands and feet can't touch any branch. Someone appears beneath the tree and asks, what is the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the west? There's a barrier between your teeth. where your voice would be. If you do not answer, where you could name anything. If you do not answer, you are impolite and irresponsible. You are wrong in every case, says Lin Ji, no matter what you do. And if you do answer, you'll fall and lose your life. How can you escape? I will just point out here, there's a lot of Taoist things from the early Taoist texts. Well, will you do this or won't you? Decide. Now, that's sort of a trick, potentially. When you're asked a question, decide one-sidedly A or B, and you're being asked by a system of thought that loves to go back and forth and be tricky, you're potentially, possibly being tricked. And they expect you to sit here with these texts until you get it, kid. A kid, holds up finger. They are asking you to choose. You don't have to. In fact, it's very zen to just flip it back and be like, okay, I stay in the tree. It's awesome. It's a condo. You know what I mean? There's the commission, but that you just don't really go the way either way they want you to go. You go a third way or anything other way, and ta-da, like you're sort of in and out of the tree, as it were. It's a branching form. But again, a lot of people get here trapped because it's like you get A or B what? And people are like, oh no, which one? A versus B? I don't know. And of course, they are trying to put you and stick you right there. In fact, this is a great case where I do tell people all the time. It also serves as, if I tell you, well, there's an elephant, Lakoff, I like Lakoff and Johnson's philosophy in the flesh. Lakoff says, don't think of an elephant. If I snap my fingers, this is instantaneously a snap. Watch this. It's not going to be snap. Not going to be snap. Damn it. I did that. Well, my mind snaps. It's hard for me to look at a turtle and be like, it's a snake. It's like, actually, your mind snaps. But then I can be like, now how do I snap? And A and B and C, and it's visual, it's audible, it's visual. And so the thing is, your mind snaps, snap, 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 and then you can go through the motions. This is definitely relying on that. You are in the situation. And so, as think of an elephant, or don't think of it. Okay, do. You know what? Don't. You know what? Don't think of it. Actually, you know what? Think of an elephant. Actually, no. Yeah, no, don't. See, now anyway I go, and of course, I'm somewhat getting you to think of an elephant, so if I actually say, it's as if you're a tree, now are you going to let go of the tree or not? Yes or no? I already got the tree in you. You already believe in the tree, because the tree is not part of, I put it on the table and then I took it off, because the choice that's on the table involves the tree whether or not, Sort of as Schopenhauer says, between the self and the world is the not of the world, the self. So he did like Buddhism. First German to possibly call himself a Buddhist in print. So in a longer version of the case, one of the monks asks him, what was the one in the tree like before he climbed up there? Notice what that does. And Xiang Yan laughed heartily. Perhaps if we reassuringly hear that, like a true to life obedient water buffalo, we are each as rude as Lin Ji, Pa Hua, Zhao Shou, Zhou Shu. Perhaps we can learn to keep our fool mouth shut. However, somewhat more so. Let us say you can't help but speak. When you open your mouth, this is also a thing I like to take. I like this direction, and again, that's just one possible way of going here, but I like this. And this is a thought experiment. We can do lots of stuff, and then say it again. It pops right back together, as if nothing had happened. Which is, again, setting the guy in your mind, or yourself in the mind, hey, you're afraid. So there's another thing here where if you notice that I'm setting you up in a tree, whether you like it or not, and then asking you to pick, which could distract you from whether or not the tree is anything you want to deal with at all. What happens if you just let go of the tree with your teeth and there's no gravity? Like, you're often in gravity, but even then you could actually imagine you don't. Even if people didn't know about gravity, they could imagine with the Zen folks, okay, like a cloud, you float there, right? You don't actually have to have the theory of gravity to say like a cloud or the sun, you float there. Okay, so you let go of the tree, and then it says if you will fall and lose your life. Well, in a certain sense, you're going to die someday. So yeah, you're going to fall and lose your life. That's a part of you. That's part of the barrier. That's part of your emotions. That's always part of you. It's another part of Michael Jackson and the fear of death. You sometimes have that in mind. Sometimes you don't, but it's a form of your mind. So where do you fall? Well, what if you just don't fall? You're there in space, and then you die eventually. Fall, die, and lose your life. Or what happens if you let go of the tree and you shoot upward towards Alpha Centauri? Like, these are not necessarily cases the Zen would think of, but as far as if you let go, you will fall and lose your life. There are many Zen answers here where you just act like you're going to reject that option. And no, I let go and now I'm wandering around. It's like, but you didn't follow what I'm saying. I said you fall and you lose your life. Yes, that's right. I fell out of the tree. I died. I then got up like Lazarus and I went and got a snack. Because the thing is, if I fall and I die out of the tree, okay, fine. But you see, my character gets to be resurrected by another character in a video game, right? Not hard to think. And so then they go off and they do something else. These are people who believe in reincarnation, right? So if you fall and lose your life, who cares? You get up again, you're a rabbit, you're a tree, you're somebody else, you're the same guy, you get up again, you're doing something else. Notice each of these times, you're set up in the tree, you're set up with gravity, as we call it, things falling down, you're set up with fear of death. But why not just fall down, die, and then get back up again? Bataille, I always have to say here, Bataille, the surreal Nietzschean philosopher, the sort of existentialist, proto-existentialist actually, French before Sartre thus, an inspiration to Sartre and other postmodernist and French philosophers, Bataille, who is much of which is too obscene to read, Bataille liked not stand-up comedy, he liked vaudeville, and he liked stand-up comedy had yet to be invented, of course, at that time, very much. He liked, in the 30s and 40s, and seeing Paris taken by the Nazis and then not, he liked Buster Keaton movies and pratfalls, slapstick comedy is what I meant, like the Keystone Cops. And he says when you laugh at a pratfall and an actor falling down and hurting themselves, it looks like, whether or not they know how to do the technique correctly, you and I are laughing at death, says the Freudian Nietzschean. That very much is here somewhere in this. It's like, okay, you fall down, you get back up again. Not only did you not hurt your knee or scrape and get a boo-boo, you're feeling great. Like, why can't I do... Okay, I'm creating an imaginary tree in your mind, right? Is there a tree in your mind? Sort of your brain, but no. So now the guy comes back to life. If you tell me that's not fair, I'm like, but there isn't a tree in your mind. I mean, it's like, no, it's adventure time. Like, now everybody's green and now everybody's people. Who cares? You know what I mean? It's fine. Like... But it's sort of not fine because we feel about it. We're conditioned about trees, people, gravity, feeling more better or worse about the guy dying. And that directs what's in your imagination in the tree with the guy clamping on the tree with his teeth, which is talking out your thoughts primarily because, of course, chatter and words actually more structure the mind and the inner and outer mind and experience than than me sitting here imagining murals, as I always like to say. Otherwise, it might be in his eyes in the metaphor. Or maybe the tree falls out of his mouth, goes right in his eyes. It's like, and then it's deep in there. You know what I mean? It's like, how are you going to prevent that from happening? Especially if he falls away from it. It doesn't roll far from the tree, does it? Excuse me. Again, I will fall down and find time to die later. So if you die in your mind, if you do, does everything vanish? Like if you die in your mind, okay, after your death, and then your parents are sad. Well, how can that happen? You're not there. You're not in the forest. You're not hearing the damn thing. How can you be after your death, hearing your parents cry? Fool! You know, again, Epicurus says death is nothing to you or I, so where are you? How many ways? Probably about like sort of in a crane shot, like somewhat back, not a metric quantitative amount, but you're kind of watching things sort of like Barclay says, this town, Berkeley. Barclay, it's like an apple, like about a hand length or so in a store away from you. An apple would look like that a lot, right? It's probably what you think about when you think of an apple. So you might think, well, somebody dies, their parents are all crying around them, my parents died, but you're not going to, necessarily be there. So it's very silly to imagine it, but it would be purposeful and you might prevent your parents some pain. So, hey, may as well be there, hang out, just don't do that too long unless everybody's laughing. Again, they laughed when I said I would be a comedian. Well, nobody's laughing now, as the joke's on the Reddits. So, in the 12th case, Shion, Japanese Zuigan, I actually made the first YouTube movie, a little film I made about this, as you can check out. He talked to himself constantly. I get to talk to you. Every morning when he woke, he would say to himself, Master. And he says, Yes, sir. Become sober, still-minded, and calm. Yes, sir. And do not be deceived by others. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Clearly, there's no fooling him each and every morning as he does this. Does look like he's practicing fooling himself and seeing what fooling himself looks like. Possibly as if that's forever important no matter how enlightened you get. I don't get it. In the 20th case, Song Yuan asked the assembly, why can't someone with incredible strength lift up a single leg? It is not with the tongue that you speak. That's it. This is, I have mentioned before, why can't you lift up your leg? And you can say, why can't you lift up your leg a single inch? Or why can't, with all the strength in your leg, or the strongest person lift up their leg 1 inch? All of this could be said similarly. And it would be the same. Why can't you lift up your leg with all the strength in the world, or your legs? And then he says, it's not with the tongue that you speak. Well, there are very easy answers to these riddles, in fact, especially if you think from a more codependent arising, multi-twisted together, not one bedrock element, Wittgensteinian, but a tangle of several simple elements, like a tangle of simple elements like sight, sound, tactile. You can feel this, although you imagine the feeling. I feel the feeling, I insist. And when I watch this later, my own hand, I will imagine the tactile feeling. But all of it is going on at the same time, like you're listening to this snap while listening to my voice, but that's all audible and audio, but you are more trained to listen to my voice than to listen to the snapping, but you can still hear it because it's peripheral. And then it's in focus. But it doesn't change, and it's hard to see the change. The interesting thing here is that you can't lift your leg above your leg at all. Try it. Lift your leg up, see how much higher your leg is above your leg. It's not a single inch, no matter with all the strength in the world. It's a very stupid joke. But how high up in the Zen, if everything is mind, how high above mind are you going to lift your mind? Let's say there's happiness in Sumer, right? Okay, how much has happiness become happy since then? Let's say that you're going to die and then you're going to live again and then your parents are going to be sad because you live again. Okay, how happy could you potentially be right then at this joke or not? How happy are you going to be ever? Well, you're going to be happy, right? I mean, you can be more or less happy, but you're going to be more or less happy because happy is happy, right? It's one of the elements that you are. Like your leg. It's going to be your leg, plenty. You might lose it. We could take pills, never be happy, and then we'd live weird alien robot existences. But as long as you have legs, and as long as you have happy, well, happy's going to be happy, and it's interwoven with everything else. It is very much you are the barrier and the thing the whole time. Now, how are you interweaving it? It is not with the tongue that you speak. Well, it is with the tongue that you speak also, but it's not with the tongue that you speak in the sense that my tongue could be considered staying still and all the rest of the world, including my lungs, the air, and my bones and my teeth, move around it and with it. So it isn't entirely with the tongue that you speak. So it is true, and this is, again, Taoist trickster language. It is not entirely with the tongue that you speak. It is not with the tongue that you speak entirely. Yes, that's true. You also speak with your teeth. If you don't have teeth, you don't have air in your lungs, you can flap your tongue around all you like in 0G, and then in space, they cannot hear you or the aliens scream or talk to each other at all. How dare you? When we lift a leg, we lift up a part of ourselves, and thus haven't lifted up anything above the situation at all. We're simply interweaving it in the components together. How high can we lift a leg above itself and ourselves? We do not speak with the tongue alone, but with lungs, lips, air, countless other things involved. In fact, you'd never count them. You could not. If we only have a leg in mind when Song Yuan asks us about it, we think about lifting the leg and not ourselves or anything. Again, it's just another part of you. If we think about speaking with something other than a tongue, we do not think about speaking with a tongue and other things together. This is this is that. Now this is something totally different, and I'm distracting you from everything behind me right now. With the leg, we think about it and not ourselves. With the tongue, we think about something other than it, as if we're talking about something with a tongue, or looking through emotions at something, but we couldn't look at anything without feelings and emotions, much ever. It and everything is together interwoven with us. Speaking of which, in fact, you then have, skipping over many cases, the 38th case, Wuzu, Japanese Goso, told the assembled monks, and I do like the opening here, it is like a water buffalo passing through a window. Its heads, horns, and 4 legs all pass through. Why can't its tail pass along with the rest of it? And that is where the case ends. It's actually like, so you can't lift, you can't lift up your leg any height, and then it says the tongue, and then that's it. And it's like, where are the rest of the words here that make this make sense? What's going on? It's a puzzle. Well, you actually already know enough. If you've been going over the Zen talks, there's a very, again, easy way of talking this through, and I may have already actually mentioned this case before, because I do like to mention this, and it ties into other cases. And of course, in a certain sense, we are all the water buffalo. Again, and I certainly mentioned this with Joshu says to the sages. I've heard of the two sages, I believe Kitoju, and yes, I'm forgetting the names. And they go, and he's like, shoo, and they're like, and I guess they're being, good and bad all together and not moving so much, at least when they're doing that, not something else. So why can't, if the water buffalo is almost entirely passed through, why can't the tail pass through? This is actually a very good joke, if it is at all what I'm thinking, and if it is also, it's also very existential in many ways. What it sort of seems to be is that you and I, of course, are looking at reality, and pretty much the beginning and the middle have come into it, right? Especially if it's like, it's like, well, what are you referring to? Well, you may be referring to everything in life itself, in like human existence, reality, the mind, everything. And again, Zen say all is mind. So the mind, reality, is like a water buffalo passing through. It's a beast. It lives. We should be humble and relate to water buffalo here, as we did before. And the front and the middle have all come into view. Why can't the end come into view? Well, because when the end comes into view, you're not there, is one of the potential answers here. You and I don't see endings to things, which in a certain sense is meant to cut off the end of this rope. As the old Irish joke goes, as you continuously seem to pull up the endless rope. Again, it would be funny if it's on a circle. It'd be even funnier if the Irish guy made it that way, though that's not necessarily neither part of the joke. It's just it keeps going on, just like I do this continuously. But I'm going to die someday, so I can't do this continuously. But right now I'm doing this continuously. Sort of like if I say, you can have all kinds of brunch. You're like, awesome. I'm like, but I mean after you're dead you can't. Ha. You're like, but until then I can have endless kinds of brunch, right? And it's endless. You cut off the beginning, cut off the end, cut off the birth, cut off the death, and you have the endless. Which is just facing a frame as if you got to deal with the middle, and we're not dealing about the beginning or the end. Now watch this. This is the beginning of something, right? Okay, now this is the middle of something. All right, now this is the end result of something. This is visual, this is audible, this is tactile. All of them. This is beginning, this is middle, this is end. All of them. Sengai again, as we will get to, I hope, or already have, is grandfather dies, father dies, son dies. Rich guy's like, I'm not paying for this. He's like, no, you don't understand. This is life, and this is the best way it works. Beginning, middle, end. Visual, audible, tactile. What's going on? Where's your mind? Where isn't it? It's very much like I'm snapping my fingers. I'm going to keep this off of camera, actually. And actually, I'm snapping the whole time you're listening to it, but actually, you're paying primary attention to my voice, and the robbers are somewhat being held at bay in the countryside right now. Let me leave that there. But this is a beast we don't entirely tame. Again, if you tame the tigers in Taoism, they treat you as one of your own. And if the tigers are treating you as one of their own, why do you have to split? In the 44th case, Ba Xiao told the assembly, if you have a staff, I will give you a staff. How generous. If you don't have a staff, I will take a staff away from you. Now that almost is like he's reality, almost. It's like, well, if you're reality and I'm reality, well, when you have something, we and I have given it to you, so I've given it to you. I'll just say half of it. Okay, if you don't have a staff, that was me. It was me and you that you don't have a staff. That's our collective reality, that you don't or you do have a staff. Okay, I'm just going to say that's me. Now that's saying part of it. That's like the tongue. It's like I'm saying part of it with the tongue and the speech, but I'm not saying all of it. It sounds weird. It sounds funny. This, again, goes all the way back. I do love, and I mention, with the School of Names, and please watch those in the Taoist videos. The School of Names folks figured out the joke, and this is very much like this, and I think it's interrelated. It's all Chinese culture, ancient, and then this is middle, and now we're modern. All these jokes make total sense in English as you talk them out plenty. It's not the language, really. If you have wheels, it's one of, again, Hui Shi's paradoxes is a wheel does not touch the ground. Because if 99% of the wheel's never touching the ground, and if I typically say anything that's 99% of something is it, often, then I could legitimately say the wheel does not touch the ground. I mean, 99% of it. And I'd be saying something that sounds and is quite nonsensical, even if we're never talking about a steering wheel and we're only talking about wheels that touch the ground always, that have never left the ground, because always, as they are touching the ground, 99% of them are not. If it is not. So you could just be like, no, all the Democrats and Republicans, I mean that one guy, but hell, that is speech. That is logic. That is life, dear fellow, as they say. What does it feel like to have a staff? What does it feel like to not have one? If I tell you, you have a staff, but I don't know if you really have it, am I taking away your staff or not? Or your feelings, and are those what having the staff is? Whether or not you have it. When Bai Sao says we have a staff or not, what is he giving or taking away from you, huh? In the 45th case, Wu Su of the windowed water buffalo, possibly widowed, I don't see his wife, She's left the building along with Elvis. Said Shakyamuni and Maitreya, which is actually Shakyamuni is a name for the original Buddha from India, who came at the apex of the era, high noon of the kalpa, of the cycle, of this cycle of the cosmos. And he says Maitreya. Now that's actually the future Buddha who will come at the end of time. Like that's actually sort of Revelation's Jesus, kind of. It's like he's coming at the end instead of the Leviathan, which is more Old Testament, like to reset time and then change everything all around. Whether, for hopefully good, rather apocalyptic, and it's rather revealing, So he says, Buddha and Maitreya, the Messiah at the beginning, baby Jesus, and the Messiah at the end of time, Revelations, it does fit somewhat in the Christian calendar here, are servants of another. Tell me, who is their master? Now that is kind of like God creating things and Jesus taking everything away with the Lord as the Lord. Those are the Lord. Those have another Lord. Who is it? Is kind of what this is saying. And of course, it's trying to kind of, yes. Take that, of course, now that I put that in a Christian context, understand this trying to be some kind of Christian mysticism and contradictory saying of things, rather than something meant to be heretical, or out of bounds, I would say, but you don't want to say that too much, of course. It's human words and judgments. But that is, again, to take that over to the Christian world, and this is Anglophonic, again, Protestant time, that, yes, that is like sort of original baby Jesus or God creation, then ending Revelations. All is in the beginning and end and middle. It's all, again, in the service of something else. Where is it? I want you to pick one place for me, please, right there, right? And then you got all of it. Perhaps their common master is somewhere near Lin Ji's true sage of no rank, and just down the road from Hui Neng's original face. It's probably you get in the car one side, get out, it's a short commute. In the final 48th case, a monk asked Gan Feng, all Buddhas of the universe enter nirvana by one road. Where is it? This is the final case. Gan Feng drew the number 1 in the air. Now, you could draw the number 1 here. Just don't, do too much. But, I guess it doesn't matter. But, of course, we would go like this. The Chinese would go like this. I have said in the logic class, you do see that the Chinese numbers and Indian Arabic numerals are all interrelated, such that as you draw 2 or 3 quickly, you do end up tracing 2 or 3 in Chinese or Indian Arabic numerals with the scratches, which is where that kind of comes from, even though it's vertical, horizontal. So he draws a line. He's like, all the Buddhas enter by one road. He's like, there you go. And of course you could go left to right to left, what have you. Stage left, stage right, or right here in the middle, stuck in with you. So let's not hear the song, and scene, let's talk about it. He draws a number 1 in the road, which means drawing a line in the air. And he says, here it is. Here's the way you enter into reality, right here. Look. There it is. That's the one way you enter into things. The monk went to Yun Men and asked the same question. All Buddhas of the universe enter nirvana by one road. Where is it? Yun Men held up a fan And he says, and the master would thus, in like China or Southeast Asia, or somewhere, would be sitting there, and the fan symbolizes authority, that you have a very nice fan, think of a very beautiful Chinese fan, and then of course you're fanning yourself because you are sort of the master or the authority or something like that. And so a fan is very, in Chinese culture, symbolic of authority. In fact, there are times where carrying a certain sort of fan means you're the royal, you are from the royal palace, you have the official fan of your office, and that means you should, like a scepter of some kind or a ring, kind of signet, you need to do what I tell you because this is from the king, So that's a symbol of authority. He holds up his fan, and he says, and it doesn't even say, is he holding it up or fanning it out, or it's all together, thwack, you know what I mean? And he can whack people with it. This fan will reach to the 33rd heaven. It's quite high. It's quite a degree. And hit the nose of the presiding god there. There are many gods, again, polytheistically. This fan is going to fly up to the highest heaven and smack the god who's in charge of the highest heaven up there. That is similar language to all the Indian and Chinese patriarchs of Zen are going to quake in fright. Striking the mind of the monk, in fact, the monk might worry he's going to be hit with that thing. I mean, all of him and all the possibilities. And right in the topmost part of him, because that's where it very much is in his face. And these people are a bit slap happy. Striking the mind of the monk in front of him in an unexplained way, pulling his nose, much like Mazu, the first who ever spoke of Chan and or Zen. So yes, hopefully you enjoyed that. Much happiness, everyone. And hopefully these are things that have grown on me. Those are my explanations. Please don't think that could possibly be the only doorway to something that has no doors in it at all. But hopefully you enjoy those moments. I will be having more videos on Zen and also Zen stories. I do like Zen stories from Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. I'm going to go through a few of them. And of course, whether or not you heard me or tactilely, you can sense this. I will, again, as always, see you if I ever see you.